Hey everyone, in this video we are going to create a window display in Adobe Photoshop. So the first thing you need to do is you need to choose a brand, or you need to create your own concept of a brand. And then once you have that brand or concept, you will then find your images to create a storefront display. So I have this nice wood backdrop. I have this really cool backdrop that I'm going to use as just like a couple sidewalls or pillars. I have this as my wood flooring. I have 1 bag, 2 bags, and 3 bags. I have my mannequin so that I can put clothing on this mannequin. I have a pedestal that I will use. I have some artwork for the wall. I have a dress for the mannequin and a pair of pants and a shirt. So I have 2 outfits. And then I have my original image that we are all going to start with. Once you've removed the background of all of your product images or any image that isn't a wall or a flooring, once you've done all that, you are ready to begin. All right, so let's get into it. I'm going to start by opening this window display storefront image in Adobe Photoshop. So I will navigate to Adobe Photoshop and I will go to File, Open. You can also go to Open right here. And I am going to find this image. Once you've opened the image, the first thing we're going to do is we are going to make sure we have our layers panel open here. So it will be in the bottom right corner and it will say layers. The first thing we need to do is we need to turn this background layer into layer 0. That way we can delete this window area and then it will be transparent to the background. We're going to double click on this background layer, and once you do that, this dialog box will pop up and it says layer 0 and we will click OK. The next thing we are going to do is we are going to remove this window display that's already in here so we can create our own window display. So I'm going to do this by going up to the rectangular marquee tool, which is also M in our toolbar. It's second down. I will click on that. It gives me these crosshairs. So I am going to click from the corner and drag over, and I want to make sure I'm deleting the window in entirety. And I'll make sure it's nice and squared up. And once I think I have most of it, I'm going to click delete. Now, when I deselect, I can see that there's like a little bit of shadow here and here. But overall, it looks pretty good. I could go over one more time and delete that. I'll just step backward. So I have my marquee selection and I'll just nudge this over with my arrows on my keyboard and delete a couple pixels that way, and then we'll want to make sure we go up and over. Once you have this deleted, we are going to go and save our PSD file so that we have it and we can save it as we go along throughout this project. So to save it as a PSD file, we will go to File at the top menu, Save As. We'll select Photoshop and the format, and we'll call this Window Display, and I'll call it Ula Johnson PSD, and I'm going to save this. All right, so now we need to start importing our flooring and our background. So first I'm going to go to File, Place Embedded, and then I'm here in our final PNG folder, and I'll start by clicking this floral image and click Place. Now, if I scale this up by clicking on the corner and I see these arrows activated, and I scale it up by pulling my mouse, I see that this is kind of too big for a background. It's too big, it's too bold, it's not in the right scale. However, if I repeat this image, I'll be able to have a cool pattern that I might be able to work with. So I am going to scale this down to about this size here, and I'll click the checkbox at the top menu, and I can go ahead and copy this. Now there's a couple ways to copy. My favorite is holding Option Shift and dragging to create a copy. You can also create a copy over here in the Layers panel. You can click on the hamburger menu and click Duplicate Layer. And so that will also create a copy of the layer. But what I want is I want to make sure that these all snap together. So I have my seamless repeat created. And then once I create this seamless repeat with this image, I can go ahead and select all 4 of these images in the bottom right corner, and I can create a group. So to create a group, I can go to this hamburger menu and click New Group, do Command G on my keyboard or Control G on the PC, and I have a group. And I can call this floral background. All right, so I'm gonna turn that off for now because I don't think I'm gonna have that be my main background. I am going to go to File and Place Embedded, and I'm gonna choose this wooden background now. And once again, I'm going to scale it up by transforming from the corner. Now in Photoshop, I do not have to hold down Shift anymore for it to transform proportionally. If you want to transform it freely, then you hold down Shift. So it kind of functions differently or the opposite as it does in Illustrator. So now that I have this scaled up, I'm going to click this checkbox. And the thing I want to do now is I want to drag this layer below layer 0. So I'm clicking on my layers panel and I'm pulling it down below layer 0. Now that it's below layer 0, I can see only the portion of the background that I want to see. So if I want to turn on my floral layer, I can do that. Now I just want this layer to kind of be little pillars on the side. So I'm going to drag that there, and then I will copy this group, and I'm holding Shift to keep it all proportional, and I'm dragging it to this side. And so these are kind of like little pillars or little sidewalls, if you will. All right, so the next thing I need to do is I need to import my flooring. So I will go to File, Place Embedded, and I will click on my flooring. Now once again, I want to scale it up, and I'm going to place it above all of this, below layer 0, but above my background. And that way I can place the depth of my flooring. Now, it doesn't quite have the right perspective, so there's a couple things I could do to kind of shift this perspective. The first way is going to be going to Edit, Transform, and clicking Perspective. Now here I can go ahead and click on one corner and bring it in, and it will bring the opposite corner inward as well. However, I'm going to need to widen this once I get this perspective change. So I'm going to click this checkbox, and now I'm going to go hit Command T to transform this, and I am going to widen. And I'm holding down Shift, and I want to make sure that this line stays completely straight when I do this. So I'm clicking check, and it's kind of, skewed a little bit. Another way I can do this that I think is a little simple is I can shear this image. So to shear it, I can go to Filter, Distort, and I can click Shear. Now here you have this dialog box here, and I can go ahead and move this point. I can change the angle, and then this image will kind of skew in that direction. So I am skewing it a little bit to the right. I'll click OK, and now that has been applied to my image, and I can simply scoot it over. So that can kind of help give that perspective to your flooring. And then at the end, before we're all done, we'll add some drop shadows and things that will add some more depth to our window display. All right, so now that we've got the wall and the flooring, we are going to go ahead and import our artwork. So I will go to File, Place Embedded, and I'm going to choose this artwork and click Place. Now I'm going to put this front and center here, and I think the size that it came in is good, so I'm going to click the checkbox. Now, if I want to add a little frame to my artwork, I can find a frame online and delete the center and place it over my artwork, or I could use a little trick in Photoshop to just add a little frame around it. So if I go to my layers panel and I right click and go to my blending options, you'll get this dialog box. So you right click onto your layer, open up this blending options, and we can go down to the stroke and check this box here. I'm going to click on this line here where it says stroke so I can get the menu for it. I can increase the size of my stroke. I can make sure the position is the inside, the outside, so I have it on the inside so it's going in my artwork. If I click the outside, it will go to the outside of my artwork. But if you keep it to the inside, I think the corners will look best. And I can change the color. I use the eyedropper tool to kind of grab a gray-white color from the window display, and I'll click OK, and I'll click OK. So now I have my artwork placed. The next thing we're going to do is we are going to place our mannequins or dress forms. We'll get them positioned, and then once they're kind of positioned where we want them to be, then we can go into the dressing of the mannequins, which is the more complicated part of this whole lesson. So let's go to File, Place Embedded, and we will select our mannequin PNG. Once again, we're going to scale it up from the corner before we check the box. Once again, keep in mind the scale of the window. So you want this mannequin to be a normal size. I think that looks pretty good there, and so I'm going to click the check box up here. Now I need to have 2 mannequins because I'm going to have 2 outfits. So instead of importing it again, I'm going to copy this layer. So I can duplicate the layer and I can move it to the right here. And I'm going to reflect this. I'll go to Edit, Transform, and then I will click Flip Horizontal. So it's not called reflect necessarily, but we're going to flip this horizontally, and now it looks like it's reflected. Now, I'm getting a little ahead of myself. I haven't labeled some of my last few layers. So I'm going to make sure I double click on all my layers and I give them names. So to rename a layer, you just double click on it in the layers panel and you'll just call it wall, flooring, artwork, etc., etc. So now that everything's renamed, I can go ahead and start importing my clothing, and then we will go through the process of fitting it onto the mannequin. So the first thing I'm going to import are the pants. So I will go to File, Place Embedded, and I'm going to select these pants. So the first thing I want to do is I want to make sure my pants are above my mannequin layer, and then I'm going to scale these pants down so that they will kind of be approximately fitting on our mannequin. So to scale it down, Command T to transform, or Control T, and I'll go to the corner here and I'm scaling it down, and I'm placing the width of the pant like on the mannequin, and so that's a little small. I want it to like be the correct length. I think that should be a good place to start. It's better to be too big than too small. And I'll click the checkbox and place this on her. Now, as you can see, our mannequin is shifting to the right. So this is going to require some photoshopping. The first thing I want to do is I want to rasterize my layer of my pant. To do that, I will right click and I will go down to rasterize layer. Okay, this means I can now select it, copy pieces from it, and it's no longer a smart object like the rest of our layers. All right, so the first thing I want to do is I want to copy this pant leg so I can kind of rotate it so that it will be sitting on the mannequin. I'm going to go to our polygonal lasso tool, and I'm going to start here, and I'm going to copy, draw around this portion of the leg, and I am going to copy it. So I can go to Edit, Copy, Edit, Paste, or I can go to Command Control C, Command Control V, and now I have this layer here. Now you can barely tell that it's there, but I'm going to go ahead and move it. And I'm going to do Command T, Control T to rotate it. And now I kind of am placing it on top of this original pant. And then I'm going to kind of delete the old pant and I'm going to blend the trousers and the pant together. So let me click check. So I have two layers. I have this pant that I copied and the original pair. So I'm going to go ahead and go to my original pair and I am going to click on the layer mask. So I now have this layer mask and I can now use my brush tool to brush off the portion of the pants that I don't want to be shown. You just need to make sure that you are clicked into your layer mask. All right, and I'm in my black brush and I can go ahead and erase this. Now, if you want / need your brush to be bigger, I can scale it up here at the top, or I can use the shortcuts on my keyboard, which are the brackets, to scale the brush up and down. Now, be careful, because I only want to delete part of this right side. Before I remove too much from the bottom, I'm going to go ahead and blend this pant leg that I copied with the one below it. So I will also create a layer mask and I'll go to my brush. And I want to make sure I have the hardness down so it's really soft and it blends nicely. And it's just kind of removing it so this layer underneath can show through. All right, so now I need to kind of add a portion of the pant back here. So I'll go in with my polygonal lasso tool and I'll kind of draw this area in. And I'll go back to my original pant layer mask and I'm going to add this portion back in with my brush. So white will add it back in. And then I'm going to deselect this and I can go ahead and remove this little notch out here. So I will make sure I'm still in my layer mask. Now I'm going to be back in the black brush to remove. All right, so this is looking decent. I do have some things I could stamp together. I'll wait until I kind of have this all merged together to do those finishing touches. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and do this again, but on the left leg. So I'll go to my original pant and I will make sure I am in the, not the layer mask, but in the original layer. And I will go in with my polygonal lasso tool and I will select this pant. I'll go a little higher up. And now I'm going to copy it and paste it. And I can go ahead and rotate it in my transform. And I can erase anything up here. So you just want to make sure that it's hitting the ankle of your mannequin properly. And I will click the checkbox here. All right, so now I need to go ahead and remove the pant from underneath. So I'll go to that original pant layer and I will go to the layer mask and I can select this original pant and I'm not going to delete it. I'm going to brush it off with the brush. That way it's, if I need to bring it back, I can. So I've removed that bottom pant. Now I can go ahead and blend this pant leg. So I'll go ahead, create a layer mask on that layer. Make sure I'm in the layer mask. I will use the black brush to remove. And I'm kind of blending here. Now I am noticing that like my crease isn't quite lining up, so I'm going to move this leg to the right a bit. So I want to make sure my crease is matching up. And now I can continue editing this layer. So we're getting close. I just kind of need to clean up this area in the center here. So to do this, I'm going to change my brush, increase the hardness. That way I can kind of approximately figure out where this needs to be. All right, so I'm going to go in, now that I know where I want to draw my line, my polygonal lasso tool, and now I will remove that area. There's a little bit here on the hip that I kind of need to blend. So this is in the original layer mask. So I will go in and just kind of brush that out. And you know, things are not quite perfectly matching up here. I can go to that layer mask, and with a softer brush, I can brush some of this off. And things are starting to look better. I think it's not too bad. At this point, I want to merge all these pieces together, and then I can kind of stamp out any remaining issues with the pant. So I have my 3 pant layers here. I'm going to select them all, and you might want to like group them together and duplicate this, since once you merge everything together, it's you can't go backwards. So sometimes I'll practice on a group that's been duplicated. So if I need to go back to the group, the original group, I can. So with the group that I duplicated, I will merge this group together, and I'll hide my original group. It's there just in case I need it. But now that this pant is all one image again, I can go in and I can use the stamping tool, the clone stamp tool, which is S, and I can hold down Option or Alt on our keyboards to select one area and kind of go in and stamp. Now you want to make sure your opacity is up, and you can adjust the opacity, which will change how severe the stamp is. I do want it to be kind of low because I want it to be really soft. I'm blending some of these lines. Here, over here, it'll be, you know, a little more obvious that I'm trying to like extend the stitch lines. And so yeah, I'm just kind of going in and blending these layers together. And I'm stamping out like this crease here. So you have to sample, holding down Alt or Option, sample, and then this area is now being placed over here. So it's a pretty fun tool. I'm going to increase my opacity for this area. Okay, so it looks decent. However, there's like a little bit I need to kind of shift around here at the hips. And then the final thing I do need to do is I need to delete the inside portion of the garment. You want to make sure you do not see the inside because that would be on the mannequin, it would be behind the mannequin. So we want to make sure only the front of our garment is being shown. So what I'm going to use now to get my pant kind of curved around this hip is I'm going to use the liquify. So we're going to go to Filter and go down to liquify, and this dialog box will pop up. Make sure you check show backdrop. That way we will kind of know how much we need to modify our pant. So I'm going to zoom in, hitting Z or the magnifying glass. I'm going to zoom in to this area, and I can see our mannequin here. So I will click on the forward warp tool. My brush is too big, so I'm going to decrease the size of my brush so that I can see it. And now I'm going to go in and kind of pull the garment. So You might have to try it a couple times. I had to undo, Command Z. However, the second time it looks like it's being placed right over the mannequin. I can also kind of bring the waistband up a little bit so it's fitting on the mannequin a little better. And I can click OK. And it looks like it's on there really well. So the final thing I want to do is I want to delete the inside of my garment. To do that, I will use the polygonal lasso tool, and I'll just go ahead and draw around the back and side, and I'm just going to hit delete. You could also create a layer mask again, but I'm just going to hit delete on my keyboard. If you choose a different mannequin that's not leaning, or if you choose a dress form, you'll have a much easier time getting the clothing on. All right, so you want to make sure you choose a mannequin or dress form that is forward facing. Now these are forward facing, however, they're just kind of leaning to the right and left, and therefore we need to make these modifications. All right, so next we're going to import our shirt. So we'll go to File, Place Embedded, and I will click on the top. And once again, I will scale it up to make it look like it is fitting on our mannequin. Now, I want to make sure that this layer is above the pant so that it will hang over the pant. It is, that's good. And this size looks decent, so I'm going to hit check. And now I'm going to adjust my placement. I'm going to scale it up again. And I think that looks pretty good. I'm just going to have to liquefy this shirt around the shoulder over here. And I'm also going to remove the inside of the shirt. So let's go to our liquefy. We'll go to filter. Now don't choose the liquefy that's at the top. That will apply the last setting that we did. So we'll have to go back down here to liquefy. And the dialog box will once again pop up. We'll zoom on in so that we can go ahead and we can move this. Now, I'm going to increase the size so I can kind of move a bigger portion of the sleeve at once. And I see that it's now covering my mannequin, and I will click OK. All right, so now my shirt is covering my mannequin, and I'm simply going to use my polygonal lasso tool to come in and draw around the front neckline, and I'm going to delete the back and side. Because this is a smart layer, I'm going to need to right click and go down to rasterize layer, and now I can delete this inside bit. If I need to erase this little portion right here so that it looks like it's going all the way around the neck of the mannequin, I can use the eraser tool since I'm not using a layer mask at this moment, and just kind of erase that away. You just want to make sure you're not erasing something that will be seen on the front. All right, so we have one mannequin dressed. We're going to put a dress on the second mannequin, so let's get the dress in here. File, Place Embedded, click on the dress. Once again, I'm going to make sure that this dress is scaled to fit the mannequin. And it might end up being a little long, that's okay. And that looks pretty good. I do need to pull it down, and I need to rotate it ever so slightly. So to rotate it, you go to the corner, but you're going to go outside the corner and click and drag. So I can have this rotated to fit on the mannequin. So you want to make sure the top of the shoulders are meeting the top of the shoulders on our mannequin. I'll click the check box, and you know, most of the mannequin is being covered. However, I'm going to kind of move this shoulder down, and then I'll kind of adjust the armhole a little bit here, and I'm going to flare out this dress a bit and shorten it. All right, so let's go back to our liquefy, filter, liquefy, I'm going to zoom in and I will make the brush smaller. So I'm going to keep this part of the shoulder there, and I'm just going to drag down this section so it's sloping. I'm bringing that in. I'm going to bring this in a little bit more away from the arm. And I will click OK. All right, so that looks like it's fitting on our mannequin better. However, I need to shorten the dress. Before I do that, I'm going to rasterize this layer. That way the smart filter will be no longer a filter, it will be permanently applied to our image. So I'll right click and I will rasterize this layer. And now I go to Command T or Control T, and I will hold down Shift so I can just scale it from the bottom up and have it hit right like that. And I can also scale it in a little bit, and that looks pretty good. I will hit the checkbox. So one thing I want to do is I want to have this flare out a little bit, so I can use Liquify to do that. So I'll go to Filter, down to Liquify, and I'll zoom in down here, and I'll go to our Liquify, and I'll make it a big brush so I can grab a big portion of the dress and I can bring it out and kind of have this little wave. Okay, so now it has like a little drape to it. So the last thing I need to do for my dress here is I need to remove the back. I can either erase it or I can create a layer mask and remove it through the layer mask. So I clicked on the layer mask. I'll go to the brush tool. We're in black, which will remove. And so I will brush over this portion. Now I want to make sure I increase the hardness of the brush. And you can adjust the size and draw really carefully around the front and back. So we're just removing the back. We want to keep the front perfectly intact. And so if you accidentally remove too much, we're in a layer mask, so you can always switch back. Now I'm in white and I can brush back on. Switch back to remove. All right, now that that's removed, I'm just going to kind of nudge this in place a little bit better. So it's definitely hitting the top of the shoulders. And I'm going to zoom out. And I think that it looks like it's fitting on there pretty well. The next portion is going to be adding the pedestals. So I will place the pedestal. File, Place Embedded. Here it is. I will go ahead and scale it up. And I can place one in the center here, and I'll hit the checkbox. I am going to duplicate this pedestal, and I'm going to scale it shorter, so I'll hit our transform, and I will hold Shift so I can just squash it down without scaling it proportionally, and I'll make this one a little shorter, and I can move it in front. Now, it's kind of in the way of my mannequin, so I'll grab my Ula dress and I will find my mannequin, and I'll be sure to have them grouped together. So Ula dress, mannequin, Command or Control G, and we'll call this our dress group. And now I can move them together. And I'll do the same for our top and bottom. I can call it outfit 1. And I'll delete that extra group I have of the pants. All right, so I can kind of move our mannequins to the side a little bit more to create some room for the pedestals. I'll also scale these down just a little bit. They're a little big. And I can adjust the layers to hide some behind the others. you'll kind of want to figure out what your ordering is. You'll just want to make sure that it makes sense. Something wild going on out here in my neighborhood. Sounds like people are racing. Okay, so I am going to scale this up. And I'm just getting my pedestals in place. And once I feel like they're kind of looking good, I'm trying to get them to be like a few different heights. I can go ahead and place my product on there. All right, so now that they're situated, I can go ahead, I can select them all to get them centered. And now I'm gonna place in my bags. So this is the easy part. File, and we'll go to place embedded. I have 3 bags. I have the small bag. So I'll probably put that on the top pedestal. Scale it down, make sure it looks like it's fitting. Hit the checkbox. File, place embedded. I'll go to this other little bag. I'll put it on this second tallest pedestal. Scale it down. Make sure it's sitting there. Hit the checkbox. And then I have this bigger bag. And I'll scale that down. And make sure it's sitting on there. I'm just going to shorten it a little more, this pedestal here. Okay, so I have all my products and all of my fixtures in here now. The last thing I need to add is my sign. I couldn't find a lot of logos for the Ulla Johnson brand, so I found this one. I can click the remove background. However, it's removing some of the letters, so I can go in with the magic wand tool, which is W, and I can click the white space and hit delete. You just want to make sure you double click the background layer so that you can have this come through, the background come through. So I can go ahead and remove the white more manually. All right, so now I'm gonna drag this over to my storefront and make sure that it's above the storefront layer. So I'm gonna scale it up and I'll hit the checkbox. I do have some white showing still, so I'll have to clean that up. But ideally, you would just find a higher quality image. I'm having a hard time this time around finding the right image. All right, that's okay. That looks all right. I'm gonna scale this down a little more since it's not the highest quality logo. And I'm gonna place it above my store. So the final thing we can go ahead and do to add a little more dimension to our window display is we can add drop shadows. So you can add a drop shadow to nearly anything here. I'll start by clicking on this art piece. So let me find my art piece, artwork. I can right click and go to the blending options, and I can click on the drop shadow. Now here I can give it a color, usually it will be black. You can change the opacity of the drop shadow. You can change the distance so you can see how that's changing, and then the spread. So you can make these adjustments to the size. We'll kind of have the drop shadow be even bigger, but you can kind of just look to see what looks best. I would have it be pretty minimal. I can click OK, and now I have a drop shadow added to the artwork. And I can kind of go ahead and do drop shadows on most things. I can click on the flooring, right click, blending options, drop shadow. Now you want to make sure that it looks natural, so don't have it be too obvious. Once you get one, you can copy it, but it's pretty easy to just keep right clicking and hitting drop shadow. Once again, you'll just want to adjust depending on the item. And now I have shadows on almost all my items. Once we get here, we can go ahead and save our PSD file. It's also good to save as you go, but you'll want to make sure that it is a PSD file. And the final thing we need to do is we need to export this also as a JPEG file. So to export a Photoshop file into a JPEG file, we will go to File, and we will export and click Export As, and this dialog box will open up. And in the right hand corner, we're going to go ahead and select JPEG, and we'll make sure we have a high resolution, and we'll click Export, and we'll click Save. And now we have two files. We have our Photoshop file, which has all our layers, and we have our JPEG file. So I hope that you have a better idea of how you can create a window display in Adobe Photoshop. I hope that you have fun with this activity.